There are still two crack stalkers out there, Dynamo and Fireball. Who do you think will make the next kill? Oh boy, that's a tough one. Come on, you can do it. Who do you think? Okay, I think the next kill will be made by Ben Richards. Agnes, Richards is a runner. You gotta pick a stalker. I can pick anyone I choose, and I choose Ben Richards. That boy's one mean motherfucker. The year is 2017, the future. The big quake of 1997 has sent the world into turmoil. The government, in order to stop people rioting, has taken control of your TV. The best show on TV is The Running Man, a game show that appears to have no rules, but has seasons and champions and winners, but no stalker has ever been killed. I mean, can someone please explain to me how this game works and how the betting works outside of the game show? Oh, and also how nobody is allowed in the game zone except the rebels, but they can't find the relay that is pretty much down the street from them. Still, I do love watching this film.
Yeah, it's one of those films, like, I love this film. I've got very fond memories of it. I think a lot of it actually stands up very well. Certainly, if you're willing to turn your brain off, as soon as you start asking questions, which sadly you have, this film falls apart immediately and spectacularly. Like, there are so many problems with this film, despite the fact that it's super fun. It's really fun, but it is absolutely full of shit.
So there's a lot to bring up into it, but I want to go straight into the game show, okay? Because I want you to explain a lot of this to me, if you can. So,
I won't be able to, but let's go for it.
Okay. So I don't understand the rules for a start.
Nope.
Okay, so neither do you.
No. Well, I like one of the big questions immediately is like Whitman, Price, and her dad. How did they I know they didn't technically win, and they're all dead. But how did they technically win? Like you said, like, nobody's ever died on this show, but surely they have to kill them to win. I don't get it.
Because it's a gladiator style thing. So apparently you win by killing, as Captain Freedom likes to say. It's a sport. It's a combat sport. Mm-hmm. So they were meant to have won, but nobody has seen them win from last season, because
they're enjoying the Maori sun.
But no stalker has ever been killed. So how did they win? Also, how do you become like a champion or last season's winner? Like, I don't understand how this.
I really don't know how you win. I mean, like you said, maybe if they'd explained it and they'd said, well, if you survive, say, long enough, you get through the round. So it's like, all right, if you kill one of the stalkers, you obviously go through. Yeah. But if you survive long enough, you go through. If they had just had a line for that, you'd be like, oh, I can get my head around it.
I think I've forgotten that line. There's that 3-hour line, isn't there? Like, they have to survive 3 hours.
Oh, maybe that isn't there. So I totally... I've seen this film so many times, but it never stood out to me. I thought the same thing. I was like, again, with the caveat that we know that Whitman and her dad, whoever, are all actually dead. But I was like, how did they get through without killing any of the stalkers? But obviously there is if you can survive long enough, then you technically go through.
The one thing I will say about this game, I would thrive as a stalker, apparently, because
you've got the right build.
Yeah, you don't have to be muscly at all. As long as you've got a belly on.
Just got to be big. Just big. Just be a big old unit. Like, let's make no mistake. The Slayers are a bit shit. I mean, Dynamo is fucking dog shit. He is terrible. Come to me, my love. Like, and he actually does his own singing. The actor who plays him, Dynamo, whose name I have forgotten. Where I've got it down. Erland van Lith. He's a Dutch opera singer and amateur wrestler. The one thing they've nearly all got in common, they're all wrestlers to one degree or another. But he's also an opera singer. They're just like, I wonder if they were like, well, we're going to hire another wrestler. He looks the part. Wait, he can sing like an opera singer. Oh, we're putting that in the film, 100%. I don't think they went out looking for a wrestler / opera singer. I think they went out looking for a wrestler, accidentally found an opera singer, and like, fuck it, we're putting it in the film.
Explain to me their thought process then. All right, we've got a wrestler and he can sing, so we're definitely putting that in the film. So what's going to make him look good is if we strap 1 million LEDs to him, put a battery up his ass,
and give him a really shit car. Like that stupid little car he's got. So much of it is just taken from them. It's like, what's his name? Jesus Christ, Sub-Zero. Like he's played by somebody called Professor Tanaka, again,
Professor Tanaka,
a wrestler. Yeah. But in one point, they literally, only once, but they refer to him as Professor Sub-Zero. It's almost like, well, he's Professor Tanaka, we'll just make him Professor Sub-Zero. Again, with the whole ice skating thing, don't get me wrong, he's a major step up from Dynamo. Dynamo is easily the worst, but he's still not fantastic. I'm not sure about, sorry, carry on.
I'm not too sure Dynamo's the worst. If you would have got to see Captain Freedom in whatever he was wearing when
what was that?
In the room, do you know what he looked like? Do you remember that 1980s TV show? They called their machines down from the spaceport. Centurions, I think it was called.
And, Centurions, yeah.
Yeah, and it all sticks on. He looked like that. He looked like I call from the power above. And like
it did, yeah.
He had this.
Well, that is the thing. Like even like Dynamo, as bad as his suit was and the whole concept was, at least what they're wearing, it looked like some money had been put behind it. Whereas like Captain Freedom, who's clearly supposed to be like their big hero, like, you know, the #1 Slayer and stuff, he was given the worst outfit ever. And I actually found that quite upsetting because I think Jesse the Body Ventura is really good in this. And there's like this underplayed element of Killian always picking on him. It's like he's supposed to be the #1 Slayer, he's a big star, but he's always mocking him. He's always undermining him. Like, you know, he cuts him off. He's just like, oh, you work for me. But they never really explain why he's got this really strange relationship with Jesse the Body Ventura. It's a bizarre dynamic which is totally underplayed, but you could say that about so much of this film. So much of it is underexplained, underdeveloped, and it's just like, well, we've got a pretty good concept and we're off to the races, forget about it. But at least the other ones, like Fireball, who is inexplicably played by former NFL superstar, what's his name,
Jim Brown.
What's that? Jim Brown. Yeah, this is like one of the greatest. He led the league for rushing yards 8 out of his 9 seasons. So we're talking about like a flat-out Hall of Famer who just randomly shows up as Fireball in the Running Man. It's bizarre.
I think he might have been Hammer or somebody else in I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker.
He is an I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. We might be the only podcast bringing up I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker in 2021 in fairness.
That is an 80s film, Mike. We might be covering
that. Really is an 80s film. I'm not sure if we can quite pull that one off. But the one person I'll say...
You can't veto that and fucking Garbage Pail Kids.
The Garbage Pail Kids. So we've got to do either the Garbage Pail Kids or I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker. Fair enough. Well, that's a tough choice. But the one who actually stands out, I mean, he dies horrifically. But in fairness, Buzzsaw does actually look quite scary because he is turned up to 11. He looks like he's constantly on the verge of having a heart attack. Like throughout, like he's never like, oh, he gets angry. From the moment he shows up at the car to the set, he's like, his blood is boiling already. I was like, dude, he's had too much Red Bull. Like, tone it down, dude.
He does look angry, and he does look the part, as you said, when he's got his chainsaws strapped to his side and he's on his bike. But when he gets out of his car and he's got his shirt tucked into his pants. And he's trying to prove his strength, and it's a feat of strength, mind, by picking his bike.
Oh yeah,
but it then looks like he's about to have an aneurysm as
the whole time
as he's carrying this bike. Like
he constantly looks like he's in the midst of a heart attack. Like he's like, I'm having a heart attack, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drink Red Bull to get myself through it. It's a very strange look. Either that, or he's on the verge of crapping himself. Either way. Everything about him is super intense. And in fairness, when I was watching it, I was like, I wouldn't want that guy trying to kill me. Certainly not with a chainsaw.
I just wanted him to untuck his shirt. Like,
sometimes that can be upsetting.
Take it from a guy that's got a belly. Don't tuck your shirt in. It doesn't help.
He's the one guy, though, physically, like you say, he's like, it is bizarre that outside of Jesse the Body Ventura, like they've all got dad bods. But the one thing you'll say about him, at least, is that he is ginormous. Like he has more of a kind of like a front rower build, or like alignment in, like, you know, in the NFL kind of thing, you know, and like he could be in the offensive line, just one of those big guys. Like, yeah, he's carrying a bit of timber around the stomach, but he's so big in his shoulders. Like when he has that scene, obviously, when he and Arnie are both holding the chainsaw, you're like, Arnie's in trouble here because he just does not look that big, as big as Arnie was in 1987. Like this guy was ginormous, and you get it sometimes. Like again, these ex-wrestlers. the thing is with wrestlers, you're usually seeing them stand next to, funnily enough, other wrestlers. And it's like giants amongst giants. So you don't really notice how big they are. But then if you suddenly see a picture of one of these big wrestlers standing next to a normal human being, you're like, Jesus Christ, they hardly look like they come from the same race. They're so big. And that is the thing with Buzzsaw. Even standing next to Arnie, who was a mountain of a man in 1987, looks like a child next to Buzzsaw. So I'm like, fair play. He's the one guy I'm like, I wouldn't want Buzzsaw after me. No way. He's too intense and he's got too much chainsaw going on.
I'm trying to think what was in the water in 1987, Mike, aside from cocaine, as you like to say.
Always cocaine. Cocaine was definitely in the water. Cocaine was in most drinks, I'm pretty sure, in 1987.
The past 3 out of 4 films that we've done have been 87 films.
Yeah, it's a great year. I was just thinking that as I said 1987. I was like, 1987 again? So many great films were released in 87.
I mean, and Willow was 88, so technically it was filmed in 87. So.
Yeah, it's the decade that just keeps giving, dude. It's the decade that just keeps giving. But the weird thing is, like you said, is the fact that there's so many things with this film which don't add up, yeah? No. But it's bizarre because it's based on a novel, or a novella, as it were, by Stephen King. And you think, surely in the novella, so much more of it has to be explained. You can't just leave all these like loose ends. But it's just like, well, this is an action film. And I think it's one of the more surprising adaptations of all time, because I think most people, if you told them The Running Man is based on a novel or a novella, as it were, you're like, no fucking way. Like, you know, it just feels like an absolutely quintessential written for Schwarzenegger movie script. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like a Stephen King novel at all, despite the high concept.
It's kind of name alone, though, isn't it? Because the whole premise of The Running Man in the book is it's completely different to the film. Like it
is different.
And then, because The Running Man in the novella is actually just out in the world, right? You've got a certain period of time, off you go, survive. And then obviously the end, and then as he flies a plane into the Running Man headquarters, if I remember rightly.
I think it was that, yeah. Because it wasn't even Stephen King. It was one of those Stephen King fighting as Stephen Bachman. Yeah. But I still think it's like on the list of like least likely movies to be based on a novel. I was looking at other films which I didn't know were based on novels. I mean, we've mentioned it before, obviously, when we did the podcast, but I don't think most people had kind of earmark Die Hard to have been, based on a novel. Forrest Gump was based on a novel. Mean Girls. Shrek was based on a picture book. I had no idea. Mrs. Doubtfire, again, based on a novel. Goodfellas was based on a novel. I had no idea. Psycho. And I mean, in fairness, I did know this, but Clueless, albeit based on Emma by Jane Austen. But I'd say this is very much on that list of films where you hear, it's like, wait a minute, this is based on a fucking novella. Like you said, it's a loose adaptation for sure. But this just feels in that very 80s way, in the same way that Commando just feels like a film that was just written for Schwarzenegger, you know? It just ticks all the boxes.
I also think, like, yeah, exactly that's right. I mean, you hear Running Man Schwarzenegger. For some reason, you wouldn't think Schwarzenegger was doing films based on novels, and that's no slight against Schwarzenegger.
No, you just wouldn't think it.
The kind of film he was doing back then.
And this is so peak Arnie as well. Like, you know, when you think of 80s Arnie, one of the things you think of is like, oh, if you were writing a movie for Arnie, you think you got to get the one-liners in. This film has the most one-liners. I really think this might be, outside of like something which is like, I don't know, The Last Action Hero, which is kind of, you know, kind of making fun of itself almost. Like this film, which isn't winking at the camera at all, I think after every single kill, he delivers a one-liner. I mean, there's...
sorry, before you are saying about one-liners, mind, but they're not all good. Because I wanted to...
No, they're not all good. They're not all good at all.
Before you quote all the one-liners, this is the first one. This is Sub-Zero. What was it? Now
Plane Zero. He delivers it with such gusto. Like he's looking up at the camera, and there is that break where it's like Sub-Zero, now Plane Zero, and it's just like, dude, it's not funny. It's not clever. It's not funny. It doesn't even really work.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
It's really bad. Like the other ones, at least they make sense. Like it's like, oh, I'll give you a lift. I mean, I'll be back is just because it's I'll be back. There's pain in the neck. What happened to Buzzsaw? He had to split. What a hot head after he, burns him alive. All these, they're bad, but it makes sense. But the one that gets the most gravitas is the one that makes zero sense. It's insane. But it's so fitting for this film that they really do kind of single out the thing that doesn't make sense, because, as you said, so much of this film doesn't make sense. And we're obviously going to get to it, but I think, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but when I think of this film, what I really think of is the game show. I'm thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting these terrible slayers, and of course the fact that, you know, the whole Captain Freedom thing, it's weird, like the way that's kind of almost written out, because they end up having a CG fight. He never actually fights Captain Freedom. He doesn't get killed. He doesn't get his comeuppance. He just kind of disappears from the film. But when I think of this film, I'm thinking of Killian, I'm thinking of the game show, I'm thinking of the Slayers. And it's almost like I forget that half of this film is about this underground resistance to this dystopian, you know, kind of future, which very much reminds me of Half-Life 2 almost, the way the kind of set. But that whole part of the film falls totally flat to me. Yeah, it really does.
A totalitarian state run by the government, like it's brainwashing you with all these game shows. And we'll get into a couple of the TV shows that you see. But you said all those
chasing for dollars.
You said all those one-liners. You didn't say my favorite one, aside from Plane Zero. Hey, Lighthead, follow me, Christmas tree.
Oh, I mean, the thing is, I had to stop somewhere because there are so many. There must be like 12, 13 one-liners in this film alone.
I always misquote it. Follow me. Hey, Lighthead, over here, Christmas tree. And then he's running, follow me, light bulb. And I always misquote it, saying, hey, light bulb, follow me, Christmas tree. But
I don't think it really matters. Again, it's so on the nose. So little thought has gone into that. Yeah. They're not classic one-liners by any stretch. You know, the best one-liners, you know, the "I'll be back," only in the reruns. Go, like that's Killian's catchline. It's just go.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yes. It's just yes, right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Kind of very rich. Is it Richard Nixon? Richard Nixon kind of esque, you know, but without the kind of, you know, peace fingers and all that jazz. But yeah, it's one of those films. Like, sorry.
I was just saying the TV shows, right? So you had Climbing for Dollars.
I love that one, yeah.
Captain Freedom's workouts.
that one is the best.
Workout is when he's talking.
Do you believe in pain? Do you believe in suffering?
Why all of a sudden does he go upside down?
yeah. It's actually, I think, a bit of a shame that there aren't more of those. Like you say, Climbing for Dollars and Captain Freedom's workout video, which is easily the best. I do love that scene. But it's like those kind of scenes like hint at an almost like kind of Verhoeven-esque, you know, dark sense of humor and a satire, which I think is maybe lacking from this film. Like you get hints of it with those, but I don't think it quite pushes the boat out enough.
Because it makes you think of RoboCop, as you said, Verhoeven, but the other Verhoeven film I was thinking of was Starship Troopers.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely get those like Starship Troopers vibes where it's like all the kids stamping on bugs and all that. Would you like to know more? And you move on.
Yeah. And it does lean into that, like with all the. Oh, sorry.
I would have loved to have seen whatever game shows they were doing, because even Climbing for Dollars is terrible. Because
it's pretty bad.
There's dogs at the bottom, and they're going to tear you apart if you fall, and you are destined to fall, because if you get so far, they're going to spray you in the face with some pressurized gas, which is going to knock you off anyway.
Yeah, I don't think this is ending well for anyone. But as you say, it very much has that kind of like gladiatorial feel where they've got like the public on side, and you know you can see that in the crowd where he just keeps handing out gifts, and very much the haves and have-nots. But I do think this film would I mean, this film is bizarrely directed by Starsky from Starsky and Hutch, which is just, it totally is. I was just like, when I saw the name, I was like, wait a minute, isn't that Starsky from Starsky and Hutch? That's exactly who the fuck it is. And you just think, well, he's done a perfectly decent job. The concept for this film, and it being an Arnie film, is stronger than the actual film itself. Like, this film, it's super fun. Don't get me wrong. I loved this film as a kid. I'm rewatching it, despite all its faults. I still enjoyed it. But you think, if this is Paul Verhoeven directing this film, and you think of the results of that with like Total Recall and how great that movie was, and you think like with the subject matter, Arnie at his peak, and I think if you get Paul Verhoeven to direct this film and to really add that extra layer of satire, of dark humor, and obviously above all else, that little bit of like class, because fundamentally he is a better director. I just feel like Running Man could have been something really special. Because, like you said, this is still coming from somebody who thinks this film is super fun, but it is that other side of the film in particular. The side, like you said, the fact that no one else, I can't really get my head around where they're actually fighting, because you said it's off grid, but the underground resistance are all there. Everything the underground resistance need to take them over is also there. It seems to be just around the corner. There's no sense of scale or anything like that. And that whole part of the narrative is totally like Fleetwood Mac is like he's heading up the resistance for some fucking. Resistance.
It's ridiculous. You said about,
it's almost like sorry.
So you said about Starsky was the director. Famously, Schwarzenegger hated it, didn't he?
Yeah. Well,
it was, director Andrew Davis was hired instead, but fired after 2 weeks because the production was by that time behind schedule by 1 week. And Schwarzenegger has stated it was a terrible decision because Glaser shot the movie like it was a television show, losing all the deeper themes, and believes this hurt the film. So I'm not too sure the deeper themes hurt the film, because I know it didn't do too well. I'm pretty sure the fact that this film made absolutely no sense probably hurt the film.
But I think that is part of the problem is, as you said, if you had I keep coming back to Verhoeven, is the fact that I think he would tie it all together. I think he would do a better job of tying the themes, tying the tone, instead of, like you said, just because that is what I remember from this film, is I remember it as an ultra-violent game show. And that's really all I remember about it. All the other narrative about the totalitarian state, about the army being involved, I almost forgot about it, and I forget about it as I'm watching the film. Like the fact that, I mean, like you said, I'm still not sure why they had to kill Whitman and her dad when they won the competition. But the fact that they didn't even remove their bodies, they just left them there on the side, just like, oh, don't worry about cleaning that, that's fine. The fact that they've got all the files for Richards, in the helicopter, like perfectly filofax with, oh, here's all the evidence you need to fuck us over in a pull-out drawer, which is totally easy to access.
It's alphabetized or alphabeticized, however you want to say it, because I'm
alphabetized. There we go with that. Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
And B, Bakersfield Massacre. Okay, let's flick into that because that's what we're talking about. Unedited footage. Basically, edited footage for TV. And then basically, raw footage. Footage that shows we're full of shit. And
it's just there so easily accessed. And all I could think was, all right, maybe you can make the argument that because they're kind of in cahoots with government, with the army and stuff like that, it's almost like they're so confident. They're like, oh, we don't need to clean these bodies. We don't need to do this because nobody's going to fuck with this because we've got, the powers that be on our side, as it were. But, I mean, come on, guys. You're not even going to, like, the alphabetized system, having all that evidence just readily available. Like, what happens if audit shows up? There's going to be some questions asked. But the fact that they couldn't be fucked to remove the dead bodies from last season, like, come on, guys. Just do a bit of work there. And it's just one of those elements, like you said at the top. They were, as fun as this film is, the screenplay at times is flat out lazy. It's lazy because they don't even try to explain these things. And in a more cultured hands, should we say, this could have been a more complete. Maybe it wouldn't be as fun as it was, if it had gone to one of these other directors. But I can see why Schwarzenegger looks back and thinks, despite its positives, it's a missed opportunity.
You want to go into laziness with the explanations and things as well. How about the victim who actually writes jingles for other shows is able to go through several layers of security doors to get to the alphabetized raw footage? There's people in these rooms and nobody's questioning why this random stranger who's probably never been here before is just walking through. And I know the fact she's worked there, but she's able to just go in and get what she needs straight away. Nobody's questioning it. And also,
it wasn't like she snuck in. She didn't go through the air vents or anything like that. She just walks in and just finds all the proof she would need to fundamentally, at least, bring this company to its knees.
Whilst we're talking about her as well, where did she hide that?
I mean, I've got something written down here, and it's a little bit crass. But I was literally, as I was watching the film, and she suddenly had it, I was like, wait a minute, did she hide that evidence in her vagina? I was like, and my wife actually said, she goes, where did she hide that? In a snatch. I was like, whoa, right. I mean, that's what I was thinking, but I didn't say it out loud, for heaven's sake. But that's exactly what she did.
It's only going one of two places, isn't it? And that quick, do you know what I mean? It's
Oh, it 100% went in the vagina. 100%.
But you've got to
Unbelievable.
think as well, as bad as these people are, because they are taking people, they are framing people, they are making people sound worse than they are. They're going to search everywhere, like everywhere, aren't they?
You would think so. Like they had that whole build, but again, it comes back to that idea, which is underplaying the film, that they've just become so overly confident. Like the fact that they can kill these people off and just say, oh, they're in Maui, and nobody asks any questions. In that kind of like, you know, we almost have to remove ourselves from the reality of our everyday lives and think, say they were doing this in North Korea, because that's the only comparable place in the world where it's not just a matter that they have.
What makes you think they're not doing this in North Korea?
Well, they might be, and that's the point. But it's not just that idea that, oh, they're getting away with it. It's like people might have their doubts, but they're so terrified to speak up that they're not asking the questions. It's just, if you're one of the haves, you don't want to fuck it up, because they don't just go after you, they'll go after their families. And again, none of this is made clear in the film, and you just think it's a shame, because they really could have dug into that. All these people in the audience where they're aware that something fishy is going on, but they're too scared to say anything, because they know if I go and say something, they'll kill me, and then they'll probably go wipe out my entire family. And that's exactly what would happen in, say, North Korea if you spoke out against the great leader.
You said about wipe out entire family. I love the fact that it's never, there's a throwaway line about his brother, that he was sent for re-education. There's never any other question about it. His brother was just used as a plot point to get into that room, to get her into the screen so they can get her to put that thing, to hide that footage somewhere. But her brother...
Well, let's be clear. We're living in a world here where women work out in lingerie. Like, you know, of all the mad things in this film, that was one of the first things I thought. I was like, wait a minute, is she working out in sexy lingerie in a house on her own? It was absolutely, what's her name?
Maria.
Amber Mendez, but her real name is Maria Conchita Alonso, who I only know from Predator 2, if truth be told. That's the only film I can think of her in. But when Arnie catches her at home, she's wearing this weirdly sexual lingerie, but she's working out in it. I'm like, what is going on here? It's just one of the many elements of this film where just like balls to sense. Let's just have her in lingerie for the fuck of it. Why not?
I question more than that. If she came into the house, put her shopping down, didn't put it away, just put it down, asked the kitchen to brew coffee, and then just stripped off and went straight into exercise. And there was no rest or anything. You know what? Captain Freedom's on. Now is the time for me to watch this. And start
in sexy lingerie.
Yeah.
Like everyone, and the thing is, this isn't a world where everyone's doing this. Like you see the Captain Freedom workout video, all the women in the background doing their dance moves and stuff. It's all very 80s workout gear, you know, like the leotards and stuff like that, spandex, all that jazz. And yet, for some odd reason, she's wearing the Ann Summers collection, 1987. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre. But there's so much bizarreness in this film.
No more 80s than the fact that the first dance when Richards is coming to the Running Man TV show was choreographed by Paula Abdul.
Yeah, it was as if to say, it's like this is one of those films that people might be looking back on 30 years from now. How can we really hammer home the fact that this film is 80s as fuck? Oh, we'll have Paula Abdul doing the dance moves for sure, because she is mega goddamn 80s. But it's one of those things like, of course, there are elements of this film where you're like, oh, it feels a little bit too close to the modern day. You know, that's one of the horrible things about dystopian futures films filmed in the 80s and set in like 2017. Like, this feels a little bit on the nose. But you wonder today, it's like, could you have a Running Man game show, but one where they don't die? Like, so, and you can answer that while I turn the light on in this room, because I'm up in Scotland and it's getting very dark around me. I've noticed. 1 second.
I'm not too sure you could, mine, could you? Because how are you going to have... I'm answering this and you can't hear me anyway. Right. I was answering that and you couldn't hear me anyway, so there was going to be no banter whatsoever.
Oh, there wasn't. But no, it was a legitimate question of that idea that...
So I'm not too sure you could. Because, I suppose it depends how you do it. Do you have a Running Man game show where they hunt you down with baseball bats? Or is it just paintball guns? Because the whole point of the Running Man... The whole point of the Running Man the game show is the fact that it's criminals who, if they win, they get, what is it? The three options I remember: trial by jury, like a retrial, I think, or a full pardon. Like, who's deciding what happens? Like, who's deciding who gets this prize? I know nobody ever wins, but do you want a full pardon or do you want a trial by a jury of your peers? Now, which one would you want?
I think that is the thing. They say a trial, but I think a lot of people, again, the problem with this film is that they don't go into details on this, is that a lot of them probably, it's probably made very clear to them, it's like, no, you're going to be on the show. Like Killian's telling them, it's like, if they're doing the interview, it's like, listen, if you don't go on the show, yeah, you'll go to trial, but I will make sure you go to prison and I'll make sure it ends poorly for your entire family. You know, the kind of stuff he does with Ben Richards, where it's like, they go out of the way to really screw these people over to the point where it's like, I've got no option than to go with this. So even though it's not made, abundantly clear, I just always go on the assumption that these people are painted into a corner and just said, well, I've got no other choice. I'm going to have to be on the running man.
Well, that's what he did with Ben Richards, didn't he? Because
exactly.
He played on Ben Richards, I guess, morality in regard to, if you don't do it, I'm going to send these two down, and they are absolutely screwed. One's a school teacher,
which is strange. Exactly. But it is one of those things I always ask myself. It's like, say it wasn't, at least for some odd reason it was allowed, and just overnight they suddenly put on a show which is legitimately The Running Man. So it's ex-cons or prisoners or whatever. They're putting a game show against slayers, and it is legitimately to the death. No holds barred, nothing edited. You see the whole thing, and you could bet on it and all that jazz. I wonder how many people would legitimately watch it if it was just overnight made legal. I reckon some people would watch it for sure.
It's not some people, is it? They've hinted on that on loads of things, like films and stuff. I can't remember. There was a film about the internet where they captured somebody was taught. It was like when Saw was out, and it was a film about some guy was capturing people and he was live streaming their torture on the internet. And the more viewers he was getting, the more people were dying. So, and it's because people will watch that. It's people's curiosity; they will watch it. And
there's definitely something to it for sure.
So, the more people than you want to admit would watch that.
I really think they would, because you already have like TV shows where people go to an island and like try not to die. It's not quite that extreme, and you always think, well, they're not going to actually let them die. But that's the general gist, and of course, the big draw is like, in your head, there's just that 1% chance or tiny where it's like, wait, what happens if they did die? It's like, it could happen. It's like,
in this shit stuff like Love Island. And I know Love Island isn't to the death. Oh man, I would, for the people that go on that fuck.
I'd probably prefer it, yeah.
Yeah. But like, people are watching this Love Island crap, and these people are cringeworthy. Do you know what I mean? But then they become famous from it. And you can see it's only a short step, really, from seeing what these people want to do to become famous to, as you say, basically...
Like, how far would you go kind of thing, I mean, this is the other extreme where people are forced into it.
Presidency. That's all it needed.
Yeah. I just love the idea that we live in an alternate universe where it's like people go to I'm a Celebrity, and you think, they go there, they have fun. But it's like really Ant and Decker responsible for hundreds of deaths. And there's the equivalent of like Whitman, Price and her dad, and all these kind of like second-rate celebrities who you think, they were on I Am Celebrity. I've not seen them since. It's because they're all dead. They're all dead at the hands of Ant and Dec. They're truly monsters. But yeah, it's one of those weird things. Like those bits of the show, like of the film, they're undoubtedly the bits that work best because it's not a million miles away from TV as it was in the 80s, and it's certainly not very far from TV as it is today. That kind of odd bloodlust where you want to see people doing more and more extreme things. And of course, they go that extra step where they're like, I can justify this by it being a monster, by it being a criminal. Like the fact that they clearly, rather than just explaining, this is Ben Richards, he's an ex-con, they go out of their way to make that video of him as a pilot and refute, and I'm going to shoot all these innocent civilians. Yeah. So they are still providing that justifiable for you to watch it and go, well, I want this guy to get killed by the Slayers because he killed all those innocent civilians. Although I got to say, my biggest problem with that film is like, I just don't buy Arnold Schwarzenegger as a helicopter pilot at all. He just looks so unconvincing. It's so bizarre.
That took me out of the film because the camera angles in that helicopter that apparently then they're showing on the raw footage or the edited footage
Yeah.
Like, it's camera angles you're never going to see inside a helicopter unless they're apparently showing this on screen.
Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, Jesus Christ, the cameras in the cockpit, they're so cinematic.
I know.
It's unbelievable. I mean, they've been edited so carefully. I don't think there's anything suspect about this at all. But that whole scene, I just, for some reason, I was just seeing him as a helicopter pilot. I was like, he just looks so awkward. I just didn't buy it at all. But as I said, at least they go to some lengths to kind of try and convince you that people are watching it like, oh, it's okay to like this because they're supposedly terrible people. But as I said, that part of the film works. As soon as they tear through the whole idea that, is it Laughlin and Rice? You know, I mean, straight away, I've lost interest in Laughlin and Rice because of the clothes that they wear as civilians. They're like, you know, Arnie's going around wearing a Hawaiian shirt, but like Rice is wearing like a 1950s kind of like, I don't know, Inspector Gadget style thing. I don't know what's going on there. Some of the hats, the whole thing is...
I love that prison break sequence. They went from the Butcher of Bakersfield thing right at the beginning to the prison break.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved, like, that whole prison break thing was weird. But the weirdest thing ever was that he would... was it Weiss? Not Yaphet Koda.
Weiss, whatever his name is, yeah.
But not Yaphet Koda. What was Yaphet Koda's name in that?
Oh, he was Laughlin.
So, yes.
Weiss was paid by Alvin J. McIntyre.
So Weiss is able to stand behind the guy and get the code forever, right? And then he's trying to type the code in once they get hold of the suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and I quote, as I pull it up, "I can't do it in here. The walls must be too thick." Even though the guy just did it in the exact same place.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. But also, again, all those bits, they kind of like hinted it. And even at the end, when the film goes full on kind of like, are worthy of resistance, it's like they make a point to say, well, this is just a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Apparently, Arnold Schwarzenegger trains them up in the amount of time it takes him to smoke a cigar. It's bonkers. It's like, oh, they're a bunch of kids. They don't know what they're doing. Because it's all basically in real time because the show's running as they're doing this. Like, they're still on air. So it's not, in the time it takes him to smoke a cigar, suddenly he's like, these kids are trained up and ready to fight the security on set and the army. What the fuck? One of those kids, like, he looks like a 12-year-old wearing a red beret. I'm like, you're gonna tell me that he's gonna go out there and fight the army? It's absolutely. They got no game plan. They just run onto the set, no cover, and they just like, all right, they're shooting at us. What should we do? Duck.
That kid is
duck under what? We're ducking under nothing. All they have to do is aim down slightly, and it's a massacre. It's insane.
That kid is a Che Guevara fan all day long.
Oh, he's totally a Che Guevara fan.
Was that prison the factory from Total Recall where Arnie pulls the thing out of his nose? Because it looked oddly similar.
It did look oddly similar. I never noticed that, but yeah, it does look a little bit similar. But I don't know, man, that whole second part of the film for me, it just falls a little flat. But in a way that I take, you know, like we talked about other films. Last week when we did The Princess Bride, the fact that I found The Machine very disturbing as a child. Yeah. There's one scene in this which always goes through me, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you.
Domino,
what's that, sorry?
Domino with his pants down.
No. You think it might be something like that, Domino with his pants down, or Buzzsaw getting chainsaw through the crotch. The one that always gets me is the needle in Arnie's hand. You know, when they're getting him ready for the show, and for some odd reason, they put that totally oversized bite guard, or whatever you want to call it, into his mouth, which immediately looks aggressive. And then for some odd reason, they have to stick a giant needle in between his two fingers into his hand. And it's like, Arnie totally sells it. Like, he looks in so much pain. And they do that thing when they I don't know, they're injecting with some kind of serum. And all they do is stick it in his arm, but they add a sound. It's like, it sounds like a drill. And the look on his face, and like the sweat's pouring off. And I'm like, oh my God, that just looks horrendous. It kind of brings to mind you kind of like the worst case scenario at the dentist. But of course, they don't touch his teeth. But it just had that kind of vibe.
Well, that's it. For me, it's not the needle. It's that oversized bite guard. Because I have one of the worst gag reflexes ever. I can't even wear a gum shield without going, whoa. Do you know what I mean? You know, when you go to the dentist and they put that piece of thing in to take an x-ray, they put something and they make you bite down.
I literally had to do that 2 days ago, so I know exactly
what you mean. Last Friday. So that you put it in, you bite down, And then they spend about 20 minutes, what feels like, aiming the gun at the side of your mouth. And whilst they're doing that, I'm going,
from that.
From that. I can't do it, mate. So when they jam this shit into Arnie's mouth, I'm there, dude, I feel for you. Like, fuck the needles in his arm. It's that shit in his mouth. I can't do it.
I mean, I don't have such an aggressive gag reflex, which always sounds very weird talking about that. But there is something about it visually where they're like, having to bite down this, but he's almost like, it fills his entire, it's just, I find it disturbing. And it's almost like they're telling you, it's like, this is going to hurt so much that you need this in your mouth because it's really going to start. And he totally sells it. And it's just one of those, like when I was growing up, and obviously we've mentioned this in a previous podcast, it was like my parents, after letting me watch Die Hard, were like, oh, he was fine watching Die Hard. He can literally watch anything he wants. And for the most part, 99.9% of the time, I was able to remove reality from fiction. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm watching it. It's pretty scary, like freaky, but I'm like, it's fine. It's just a movie, even when I was a kid. But there were still certain scenes which jumped out at me. And one was like, they're maybe the more obvious ones, but it was the torture scene in RoboCop when they line up in front of Murphy, like the murder squad. They all just shoot the shit out of him, blow off his hands, horrendous. No. There's the scene in Aliens where Ripley's stomach, it's not the bit where the alien goes through her stomach, it's where she's dreaming and you see her stomach stretch. I always looked away from that. And for some odd reason, it was the needle in the hand in Running Man. I was like, and maybe it was because I had to go to the dentist a lot when I was younger and I had to have needles in my mouth. And it was just like the thought of them was really freaky. But just to see it going into his hand, it's not like gross or anything like that. There's no blood, but there's something about that visual impact where I'm just like, oh, dude, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
That's never affected me. But and to be honest with you, the oversized mouth guard never affected me before until I watched it this time, just after I've had to have my recent x-ray at the dentist. And I thought, dude, I feel for you. I honestly feel for you. Like, fuck the needles and all that, but that thing in your mouth, can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, sorry, Karen.
I was just going to say, I know we've mentioned the stalkers a little bit, but that locker room is insane. Like, are they all stalkers or?
Well, I did think that was true. I know in America, they do that thing where, obviously we don't do it in the UK, but in America, like the press go into the locker room after the game.
Yeah.
But it is that weird thing where it's like, oh, we're here in the locker room and the energy is really going. And it's absolutely jam-packed. It feels like they're not necessarily press. It feels like some people are just watching the competition from the locker room. Yeah. And it's like, why is Captain Freedom again, the whole thing with Captain Freedom feels totally underplayed. But the fact that there just seems to be a lot of people in my head, I'm not sure if this is true, but thinking back, I'm like, are they like just drinking champagne in the locker room? It feels like that.
I don't know where the locker room are or if they're in what they call the green room, because in this film, there's a lot of rooms where random people are watching the TV screen or the camera because
100%.
But it's when Captain Freedom is trying to do his story to Killian. He's like, oh, there's such a buzz in the locker room today. This reminds me of a story. And there's just random people he's high-fiving and towels and stuff. And I'm thinking, are they stalkers? Or...
Again, it keeps coming back to the idea. It's underplayed. Like you said, as you mentioned at the top, there's that whole thing where they have people betting outside. And it's just like, so are those like your kind of like everyday scum? Like, are we led to believe that the vast majority of people are living on the breadline and they've got these like unofficial betting schemes as they all live in this dystopian future, while a small number of people get to go to the Running Man game show and get VHSs handed to them in 2017? Like, oh, here comes the Running Man VHS. Like, dude, it's 2017. I mean, a Blu-ray player would be slightly out of date by this point, but fucking hell, a VHS player?
Explain the Running Man board game to me. How does that work at home?
I mean, like you said at the top as well, the odds are mental. Like, just be clear, Ben Richards, like, you quoted at the start. What's her name? The old lady?
Was it?
I want to bet on Ben Richards, Agnes. Yes, he's a bad motherfucker and all that. But, like, they've just seen Ben Richards kill 2 Slayers. Yeah. And then just like, I have $200 on Ben Richards. I want to bet on Ben Richards. All this nonsense. They immediately put up 100 to 1. What the fuck do you want to lose every bet? You've just seen him kill 2 Slayers, and now you're going to give everyone odds of 100 to 1. Like, Jesus Christ, dude, you are going out of business immediately. Absolutely psycho odds. Give him like 3 to 1, maybe.
I did not get the betting. I did not get the odds. Like, and I love it in these films, right? you see it in like you used to see it in like blood sport and kickboxer and all things like that. The betting, the guys taking betting around the ring. And don't get me wrong,
That's how it works.
I've never been to a death fight. I've never been to anywhere where like
I've never had the pleasure. Yeah.
I've never been to anywhere like this where a guy is walking around with betting slips in his hand because they're not writing on them or anything that I can see. They're literally just taking one out, going, "You have that, you have that, you have that." And
Yeah, I have no idea. I have to assume that there's a system in place, but you think of a film like Bloodsport or a Kickboxer when they have these old-fashioned like betting systems, and it feels like just a lot of people shouting and a lot of people just waving money around, and I'm just like, I don't know how that works. But then equally, I see these films on Wall Street, and they're on like down on the floor and stuff, and it's all just people shouting on the phone, and there's just tickers running along the top. And I'm like, well, that just looks just as mental, but that seems to have worked. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that the system itself works, despite the fact that, like you, I have no idea how it works. But I will never understand giving punters odds of 100-1 against Ben Richards when he's just killed 2 Slayers. It's the height of madness.
I love how this is set in the future, and like there was a quake in 1997, and it was all that stuff. But then they still had Gold's Gym and Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
They still had Gilligan's Island.
Well, and apparently, of all the things that the Great Quake destroyed, it was all proof of Star Trek. Yeah. Like, the fact that like he's got to explain who Mr. Spock is in 2017. It's like, come on, dude, everyone knows who Mr. Spock is. But apparently, all the classic VHSs of the original series of Star Trek just fell into the hole with the Great Earthquake, and that was the end of that. So it's Fleetwood Mac. Was it Fleetwood Mac? Remember that? I think it was. Again, these are such strange sentences. The movie directed by Starsky from Starsky and Hutch, starring Fleetwood Mac talking about Mr. Spock. So wait, is this an Arnold Schwarzenegger film? Yeah, the one based on a novella by Stephen King when he was writing as Richard Bachman. It's like, oh my God, what is happening here?
You've got to stop saying Fleetwood Mac as well, like the whole band were in there. It was just.
That's what I'm thinking of us. Wait, what's his actual name?
Mick Fleetwood.
Mick Fleetwood, yeah, his name is.
The bassist is something Mac, isn't it? So they took their 2 names and put them together, and they came up with Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah, I shouldn't just keep calling him Fleetwood Mac. That is very lazy on my part. I do apologize.
Like both of them were like a double act.
Yeah. Well, wait, you're called Fleetwood Mac as well? I'm called Fleetwood Mac. Dude, we should totally make a band together. What are we going to call Fleetwood Mac, dude? What the fuck? I love that. Like, you don't really have that anymore, where bands are just named after a dude, or in this case, like you say, like a combination of names. Like, what happened to the Bon Jovis of this world, where he was so confident as the lead singer? He's like, no, the band's just going to be called Bon Jovi. It's like, dude, that's just your second name. It's like, yeah, I know. It's going to be fucking awesome.
Van Halen.
Yeah. It's just, you don't really get that anymore. Like, certainly not as a band. You can have someone who's close a singer and they'll have like a touring band. Yeah. But Bon Jovi are very much a band with Tico Torres and all this and these individual members. But they're just known by the lead singer's second name. Like, you son of a bitch, you're just going to call it after your name? It's like, well, dude, I'm the only person who has to be here. Just be clear, we can get another keyboardist if we need one, Jesus Christ, we're not going to lose any sleep over that. All right, fuck, Bon Jovi it is then. Unbelievable. Fleetwood Mac it is. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to cover about this batshit crazy movie? Because the fact of the matter is, we don't have the answers because there are no answers out there. This film is insane. It half works, but it's super fun. But I think, is that pretty much it?
I mean, the fact that I love the fact that it was sponsored by Adidas.
Yeah. There's a lot of product placement going on for sure.
And if you wanted to know who the survivors were going to be when you first watched this film, the fact that the 2 main stars are dressed in yellow and the other 2 throwaways are dressed in silver.
Yeah, it's kind of like the equivalent of like, Star Trek and being a red shirt. Yeah. It's like as soon as you see them, you're just like, dude, I don't think Laughlin and Vice are going to survive this. It's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. They are dying today.
What I did want to bring up was the fact that Arnie gets to sit comfortably in the rocket sled whilst Weiss and Laughlin are turned around, and they are and you could tell that they're hanging. Like
they're so awkward. They're so awkward.
Gravity is affecting them a lot because they're trying to stay up and they're trying to act whilst they could fall at any point through this tube.
Yeah. And it is one of those things, like you said, it's like Arnie's not going to do that because it looks so uncool. Laughlin and Weiss look so uncomfortable in those chairs, whereas Arnie's sitting there still looking totally badass. The only thing I will say in regards, because I do love those scenes, I still think they look great when they get shot through the tunnels. And again, I think they turn down the wind machine on Arnie's face because he looks like he's going fast. Weiss looks like the skin is going to be peeled from his skinny face. But when they put Killian, who in fairness we haven't actually talked that much about, and we certainly haven't mentioned his super 80s jacket and shirt combo.
Yeah.
But when they send Killian down the tunnel, I get it, they've removed the safety net, but when he hits the poster at the end, why does he explode? There's no reason for him to explode.
It's Simpson syndrome, isn't it? Anything that happens in this, it explodes. And that's basically what happened to him. If we're talking about Killian before we move on, I love the fact that his inner circle included his makeup artist.
Yeah, you know everything. You know all the dirt because you do the makeup.
Yeah. So everyone leave. Like, my inner circle needs to know everything. I'm going to talk to Ben Richards silently and try and convince him to become a stalker. And yeah, makeup guy, you stay with me because I may need you to do my eyebrows again, but don't touch my hair. Do not. Yeah,
don't you touch my hair, son of a bitch. There's going to be trouble. And the other weird thing about this film, and I get it because he's friends with Arnie and he is in a lot of his films, but the whole weird subplot with Sven, what's going on with Sven? It's like they keep implying that Sven is like, for all the stalkers, for the fact that Arnie's there, the biggest badass is Sven. Like right down to the end when like Arnie's there and he's got a machine gun, the full works, but it's like, oh no, look who's coming. Sven, dressed like the big boss man, he's going to mesh up. And then, of course, Sven just shows up and he's like, well, I've had enough of your shit, I'm leaving. You know, too many steroids or whatever his line is. But the whole Sven thing...
I had to put, was it closed captions on to find out what he was saying because his Swedish accent was thick then.
Like, it is very strong. And it is...
What was he said? I've got the scores for more steroids as he walked up. And I realised it sounded more like Sean Connery than
Sean Connery, I've got the scores for more steroids. It was a little bit Sean Connery, I'll give that, but I'm not going to try and do a Swedish accent or Norwegian, whatever he is. I think he is Swedish, right?
I think, yeah, he is. Well, Sven, isn't it? Come on.
Sven, yeah.
Sven Ole Thorsen. If he's not Swedish, that dude is like Scottish.
Yeah, Sven Ole, yeah, kind of. It has to be Swedish, doesn't it? Jesus Christ. But yeah, I mean, he was Denmark's strongest man in 1983. He was also in Conan and Gladiator and stuff like that. Yeah. So I get it. He's a big guy. He's strong. But I don't think he's quite big enough for them to play off this whole idea that everybody would be like, oh no, Sven's coming. Because he never shows any kind of like, he's very kind of calm and placid for the entire film. So I don't know, it feels like maybe there are a couple of scenes, like if you had one scene, perhaps, where somebody was out of line and they said something wrong to Killian or they got in the way and Sven just comes up and he just breaks their neck. Does something super violent, like totally chill, totally placid, but just comes up and does something horrific and just like casually throws someone out of a window, whatever. If you had that scene, it would make more sense. But we never see Sven do anything other than stand there and look large in a film where there are many large, very large men. So yeah, the whole Sven thing fell a little flat for me, which was a bit of a shame. But
I do love the wry smile he gives after the court-appointed agent, as it were, was telling Arnie all the stuff that was going to happen to him. And then he gets him to sign a form and he goes, come on, use my back victim. And Arnie stabs him in the back. And don't forget to send me a copy. And you get Sven just giving a wry smile as the guy's going, and trying to grab this thing out of his back.
It's a horrific thing to do, though, right? To stab someone in that one bit of it. Like, it's bad enough if you get an itch in that part of your back and you can't quite reach it. The idea of somebody stabbing you with a pen, it's genius because you're like, it's not going to kill them, but it would just suck because it would hurt so much. And you've just got this thing in your back and you just cannot reach it. And you look behind and everybody just kind of laughs at you. You're just like, oh, good luck with that one, dork. And well, that's that. Sven's not going to help. But I think that's enough. Right? You know, like I said, you know, we could go round in circles, but I just don't think the answers are actually there for this film. So it's something we've done recently with these podcasts is the love and hate section. Obviously, the last week with the Princess Bride, it was harder because there was very little to actually hate. I suspect there's a little bit more we could pick out in the hate section of this. But first, the things we love. So I've got Arnie cigar smoking. I mean, I know he does it, you see it a lot, but it's peak Arnie cigar smoking. He just looks great smoking a cigar in this film. Arnie's beard, something you don't see nearly enough. You see it at the start of Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
And in this, and it's like, it's not something he actually has. Obviously, he has it more now that he's in his, latter years, as it were. But when you're talking about peak Arnie, I was like, you look cool as shit with a beard. And you just didn't see that often. So it was nice to see. And completely contradictory to last week's Dog's Dinner of a main theme song, Restless Heart by John Parr. What a belter. This is in the pantheon of great 80s theme songs, and I think it's just totally gone under the radar. Like, people don't talk about it. This song is fantastic. I have listened to Restless Heart, I'd say about 30 times this week. It's such a great theme tune.
It is a great theme tune. I mean, it's on par with Princess Bride's theme tune from last week.
Jesus Christ.
No, I do like it. So the three for me, you've stolen one of mine, which was Arnie's beard. Because I thought the same thing. Like, Arnie's beard is great.
He just looked cool as shit. Like, when he earlier in the film, when he's got the gold Jim's t-shirt and stuff on, he's just like an absolute unit in 87. He ruins it by shaving and putting on a Hawaiian shirt, which he can't pull off later in the film. But that scene when they first escape, and of course it benefits that Vice and Laughlin, as we already mentioned, look like absolute assholes. And then you just got Arnie with his Gold's Gym t-shirt, his beard, and his cigar. I'm like, dude, that guy just looks the business. It's like, you guys look like, if I came out dressed like Vice and I saw Arnie looking like that, I'm like, I'm going back home and I'm changing. I've got to put something better on. I have to.
They fuck off because obviously they're a bit jealous of his beard. The second one, I enjoyed Killian's smarminess. Like, he does, like, not just his smarmy, but just Killian, just that character is great in this. So I
totally agree.
I know we're not explaining everything. We're just going from quick fire. So I love Killian. And my third one, I absolutely love Maria Conchita Alonso's voice.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
God, her voice in this is fantastic. Like, when I was a kid in this film.
She's super hot as well. I mean, I don't really buy the relationship between her and Arnie at all. And I think they know, like, when they do the bit where he's got his hand around her neck in the end, it's like a visual callback to, maybe there was a bit of chemistry. There was never really any chemistry. But she is great. And she is mega attractive in this film. There's no two ways about it. And that voice, man, that voice. Her
voice is like when she's escapes from, you're the escaped convict, Ben Ridd. Like, she's basically just reading from a script. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Some of the exposition. I mean, if anything, this film probably could have done with a bit more exposition, but the limited amount that is delivered in this film, it's pretty clumsy for sure. But you can say that for most of the things about this film.
I'm absolutely in love with her voice. Back to you then for hate.
We've already mentioned Arnie as a helicopter pilot. Don't buy it. Kids in red berets. Don't buy it. And Laughlin and Vice's civilian clothes. Horrendous. Oh, and to add one on, we already mentioned it. Hand needles. Horrendous stuff.
I thought that would have been number one for you. So for me,
these weren't in order. That if you're going to put it in, I don't know. What's worse, the hand needle or that fucking red beret? It's pretty close. But
so for me, not in order. The Rules of the Running Man.
Yeah, good shout.
I can't deal with them. The Rules of the Running Man, the Rules of the Betting.
Yeah, crazy.
And weird makeup guy just being part of the inner circle. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, there's a lot of things in this film. The hate list could have been actually pretty long for this film, but as equally long as things I actually do love in this film. But some weird stuff.
Yep. So moving on to facts then.
Mm-hmm.
And I am never prepared for this section. So,
and you do it every week.
I know. Yeah, I got one job on this podcast. You think I would do it properly, right? When Rob Cohen purchased the rights to the Richard Bachman novella, The Running Man, he had no idea that Bachman was actually a pseudonym for Stephen King. So I don't know why that would obviously, yes, Stephen King is more gravitas than Richard Bachman. But if you like the book and do you know what I mean? I don't understand why.
I think it would have an impact. Like, if you were getting a novel from what you're assuming is a relatively unknown writer, and then suddenly you find out that writer is actually Stephen King, you're finding out that you're going to be judged to a different degree. It's like, some people are like, it's based on a novel, whatever. I don't know who Richard Bachman is, blah, blah, blah. But if suddenly you've got to remember just how popular, just how big Stephen King is. Yeah. It's gonna be criticized in a completely different way if it's based on a Stephen King novel, for sure. Sorry, I didn't quite commit to novel or novella, and I just kind of went novella. Excuse me. Novella, I do apologise.
Many people who worked with Richard Dawson, Killian, on the game show Family Feud, we know it in the UK as Family Fortunes, say that in real life, Dawson was more like his character, Damon Killian, in his handling of underlings.
Oh my God. Do you know, oddly then, the way you started that sentence, I bizarrely thought you were going to say, many Bothans died to bring us this information. I was like, well, I wasn't expecting that, but I enjoy that quote all the same.
From Star Trek, when they talk, not Star Trek, fucking hell, Star Wars, when they talk about how they got the information about the Death Star, and then like people died for this. Like
many Bothans. It was just like, it just comes out of the blue. It's like they're talking, but then all of a sudden she was really somber. Many Bothans died to bring us this information. It's like, whoa, chill out, this fucking Star Wars film. Jesus Christ. Sorry, to completely derail things there. I do apologize.
No. When Arnold Schwarzenegger ran for governor, he rode around in a campaign bus and named it after this film. So he called his campaign bus the Running Man.
Well, I guess he is a man running for office. It's, again, a little on the nose, but sure, why not?
Things I hate. Fourth one. Arnold Schwarzenegger running.
Oh, I love that. I thought he was really good running. I thought he was great. I mean, he's no Tom Cruise, but like he runs. I was like, when what's his name? Killian's watching him. He's like, look at that sucker run. I was watching. I was like, yeah, look at that sucker run. You can fucking run for a big guy.
That's all right, because it's quite cinematic as they're trying to show him. But then when he's running from the coppers in his Hawaiian shirt on the tarmac, it looks awful.
I thought he did all right for a guy with that much muscle. I totally bought into it. If you want to see bad running, there's a scene. Oh my God. I think it's in Expendables 2 when like, just for some reason, they're like, we're going to have Sylvester Stallone run across a courtyard. And it's like watching, what's his name? The cowboy from Toy Story. What's his name? Woody, yeah. It literally looks like Woody running across a courtyard, but it's Sylvester Stallone at the age of, like, at that point, 71 years old, just like with every last puff being like, all right, it's just going to be one take, but I've got to run across this courtyard. It's horrifying. But of course, that's, faint praise to say it's not as bad as that. I actually think Arnie running in this, considering his size, is actually all right. But
not a fan of it. Right, moving on. You've already said about Dynamo being a singer. The film inspired TV's American Gladiators in 1989, as well as the plot and settings of the Williams arcade game Smash TV.
Yeah, totally.
I love the fact
Smash TV is totally Running Man.
You wanted Running Man in now. You pretty much got it in Gladiators.
It's the closest thing to it, without question. I just think there should be maybe more threat of death. It needs to be more dangerous. There's too much foam when it comes to gladiators. That's the problem. I'm not saying I want people to actually die, but maybe just the threat that they might get hurt a bit more. You can't,
just a bit mean.
Yeah. The only time there was ever that danger was when they did with the sticks, and it was Shadow doing it. I'm not sure if you remember Shadow, but he always looked like he had that Buzzsaw vibe. He always looked like he was on the verge of having a heart attack. Like, he was so intense. So it's like, all right, he's basically hit me with foam mallets, but he looks like he's going to fucking knock my head off with one of them. So you needed a bit more of that, I guess.
The footage of the attacking helicopters is from King Kong, from 1976's King Kong.
Oh, Jesus
I just
Christ.
love the fact that, these attacking helicopters in The Running Man is from King Kong. That's quite funny to me.
That's crazy.
Producer George Linder sold his company, Quadra Wheelchairs of Westlake Village, California, to help finance The Running Man. I just love the irony in that. He sold his company of wheelchairs to
make something called The Running Man. Listen, I'm getting out of the wheelchair game. I'm getting into the running game. So, really, really going up in the world, honestly, I suppose. Literally and figuratively, I guess.
It's insane. John McTiernan intentionally kept Jesse Ventura out of any close-up shots of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator because of Ventura's immense size, 6'5" and almost 300 pounds. The director didn't want Schwarzenegger looking small in comparison, which is evident during the fight scene in The Running Man when Ventura almost dwarfs Schwarzenegger.
I didn't think Ventura was that tall.
Yeah.
I never got the impression he was that tall, but it does happen with Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw is ginormous. But yeah, it is one of those odd things. And as I said, it's a strange part of the film. Like, it feels like it's building up towards a fight with Captain Freedom, and you get that weird CG fight. That CG fight they put together incredibly quickly. This is 2017, where VCRs still reign, over all other forms of entertainment. So how they put that together so quick, I have no idea. But that's actually the most violent bit in the film. The bit where he breaks her neck and then runs him through the spikes. It's actually pretty nasty. It never happens
as well, don't they? They keep hinting at her getting her neck broke because Arnie says it twice.
Yeah, and then it actually happens in the CG. But the film ends and she's fine.
Yeah. Richard Dawson only agreed to be in the film provided he was not expected to use any profanity in his dialogue. That one interests me because this entire film, there's nothing but profanity and killing, but Killian is like, no, I'll do it as long as I don't swear. I don't care if anyone else swears, but I don't want to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter the fact that I'm an absolute monster. As long as I'm not saying any sweary words, then we're all cool.
Originally scheduled for a July 1987 release, it was moved back 4 months by TriStar to avoid competition with Arnold Schwarzenegger's other summer film, Predator, which was released in June.
What a run, though. I mean, let's be clear, this film's no Predator, but still, it's not a bad 1987 to have.
Yep, so this is what I hinted at earlier on. Arnold Schwarzenegger thought Paul Michael Glaser was a terrible choice to direct. What with Glaser coming from a TV background and having no film experience as a director at all, he thought Glaser shot this film like a TV show, losing all of the script's deeper themes. Schwarzenegger suspected that because Glaser was a last-minute replacement, he didn't have time to research this future he was depicting, unlike James Cameron had with The Terminator. Also in television, they hire you and the very next week you shoot, so he didn't place all of the blame at Glaser's feet.
Well, the thing is, you look at his CV, if you look at IMDb and the other films he's directed since, it's the air up there with Kevin Bacon and Kazam with Shaq. It's like, Arnie was right. He's not gone on to have this, and again, I don't be critical. This guy directed The Running Man, but he hasn't gone on to have an illustrious directorial career. And again, you think about the people Arnie was working with around the time, and you think McTiernan, Verhoeven, Cameron, and you just think if he could have got any of those guys, and obviously we mentioned Verhoeven, who I still think would have been the perfect fit. This film, it's a perfectly enjoyable film, and I loved it as a kid. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't reach that rarefied air of some of the other films that Arnie was making at the time, and part of that is simply because it's just not directed with the same nous. And of course, there are problems with the script. But you just think it needed a bit more time in the oven, and it needed a little bit more class behind the camera. There's no two ways about it.
So last one from me then. The character Mick, the leader of the underground, is played by drummer Mick Fleetwood of the supergroup Fleetwood Mac. His compatriot in the movie, a character named Stevie and played by Dweezil Zappa, the son of legendary musician Frank Zappa, is an obvious homage to Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac.
Clearly.
I mean,
in terms of...
If you didn't get that, then there's a problem with you,
Clearly. There's definitely a problem with me. A lawsuit determined that the movie was plagiarized from the French movie Le Prix du Danger in 1983. I've never seen that, surprisingly enough. And the actual Running Man game show was inspired from a Japanese quiz show called Trans-American Ultra Quiz. And it was basically one of the shows where it was torture instead of murder, which I'm not sure if you can find online, but I always remember when I was younger, they used to have VHSs about these Japanese shows. And it was always somebody getting a spider put on their face, the more extreme end of, say, I'm a Celebrity or something like that, but all very Japanese. So supposedly it's taken off that. But that's pretty much it for facts. In terms of soundtrack, I mean, it's super synth heavy. So, what you do, you get a German. So Harold Faltermeyer, he's most famous for Axel F's theme from Beverly Hills Cop, but he also did work on Top Gun, Fletch, Cuffs, Tango and Cash. This guy's done a lot, and I actually think it's a really good soundtrack. Score. It's very much a score of its time. But that synth-heavy score, it's it totally works for this film. But as I already alluded to at the start, the real winner in this film is the soundtrack, and it's Restless Heart by John Parr, which I think is an absolute belter. And it is one of those, going back and rewatching these films as we have over the last, 39 podcasts, there's been a handful of songs which I've kind of gone back to, man, this is the absolute business. This is right at the top of the pile of songs where I forgot just how good it was. But as good as the score is, as I said, it's the soundtrack in particular, that main theme, which really steals the show for me.
No, I agree. I thoroughly enjoy that song as well.
Well, at least we're agreeing this week after last week's travesty. So we'll just leave it at that, with us agreeing for a change.
I don't even want to talk to you on the fact of last week because there's something wrong with you. But I was agreeing with you, and I'm trying my hardest to remember it. I know I like the song, but I can't remember.
You can't remember the song? I'm not going to sing it. I'm not, despite the fact that I've been singing it in the shower all week. So we'll move, before I get tempted, we'll move quickly onto Legacy. Obviously, there's talk of an Edgar Wright-led remake. And I do actually think, despite the fact that a big part of it is Arnie's inclusion, we've already listed the numerous problems, despite the fact that it's a great concept. This film is absolutely perfect for a remake. The fact of the matter is, we've talked before about like a perfect example is like RoboCop and as we were saying, like Total Recall. And the fact that once you remove that Verhoeven magic, that sense of satire, that extra layer of social commentary, something's lost and they just turn into generic action films. Whereas this film is actually lacking those extra layers. So I think and a director of that, I love Edgar Wright. I'm like, yeah, I'd be genuinely interested to see what he could do with the Running Man concept.
Because it is the Running Man concept. It's not really a remake, is it? Because they're actually, again, they're basing it off the book, and they're going to stick, like they said, like they did with Total Recall with Colin Farrell back in 2012. Was it 2012 or fucking hell?
It was around then, yeah.
Yeah. What they said was that they were sticking more to the book. So they're going to do the same with this one, and you wonder then if people are going to compare it more to the book or to the film. And
I think most people are going to compare it to the film because
that's where Total Recall failed again. It's a generic action film, and it was all right for what it was, but it just had the name Total Recall, which people compared to the Arnie film, and that's where it went wrong. And I think the same thing's going to happen again. I mean, the fact that it's got Edgar Wright in it is a great boost for it. But I just talking about
but like I said, the problem is the thing is we're talking about two very different films, like Total Recall, and obviously we did Total Recall a few weeks back. Total Recall is a stone cold classic. Yeah, Running Man is not a stone cold classic at all.
I agree with you, but what they're saying is they're going to stick more to the novel, to the themes. Of
which is a good thing because the fact of the matter is nobody's gonna compare it to the book. Everyone's going to compare it to the Arnie film.
And that's the problem because the novella ends, as we've already said, ends differently, is set differently. Yeah. People are going to compare it to the Running Man film, to this film, and it's not good because
it'll be different.
The film and the novel are in two separate universes, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
but but that is the thing. Whether they're comparing it to the film or the novel, whatever, I think it's almost irrelevant because I think most people will look back and go, "Listen, this film, despite having its many positives, isn't a classic." And it's, you could do something more interesting with the premise. There's no two ways about it. So I'm on board for an Edgar Wright-led remake for sure.
So I am. I just fear that it is going to go down the Total Recall route. That's all.
Yeah.
We'll have to
wait. I'd hope that it'd be a lot better than that. And I do. Again, the fact that it's Edgar Wright-led makes me believe it's going to be something more interesting than the somewhat generic likes of the RoboCop and the Total Recall remakes. But I guess the other thing is, I mean, where does this sit on the list of Stephen King adaptations? And I was going to go through a list, but there's too many of them. I mean, it's a total mixed bag. I mean, at one end you've got like Shining, The Green Mile, and then at the other end, you've got something like The Dreamcatcher or something like that. This kind of sits in the middle. It absolutely sits in the middle of Stephen King adaptations. It's not the best. It's not the worst. It's hardly an adaptation for the most part. It's more kind of built around the concept of the idea established in the novella. It's run of the mill as far as Stephen King adaptations go, because his really go one end to from great to truly horrendous.
You need to not class it as a Stephen King adaptation and more as a Richard Bachman one, because the reason why he did Richard Bachman, because it doesn't follow the themes of Stephen King.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, if we're talking purely from, like, rather than a tonal perspective, just purely from a quality, like, they're still written by the same man.
With the quality, but they have done a few Richard Bachman films off the book, so look at it more towards that, because what did you have? You had Thinner? I say it
pretty bad.
You had Thinner, you had The Running Man, and I think they're doing The Long Walk now as well.
I'm looking forward to that. I really love The Long Walk. I think that could work brilliantly on the screen. It's really simple, but it has all the potential to be a great film. But as you already mentioned with some of the Richmond, Thinner as an example, I mean, there's almost too many to list. And the fact of the matter is, as good as some of Stephen King's novels are, if you don't have the right person at the helm, it can go to shit. You know, the other end of that spectrum is you have a really simple idea, but if you have a great director behind it, then, you know, you can elevate the material. So yeah, there's no point in kind of assuming that a take on that would be potentially, it could be great, but we'll see what happens. I've given up on kind of making any assumptions about Stephen King adaptations in terms of quality. That's for sure.
Next is just
the last one,
then, isn't it?
Video games. Yeah. So, I mean, you've already mentioned the fact, obviously, there's Smash Brothers in terms of video games which are based on the concept of the Running Man. But like so many movies of this era, there was a game released for the Running Man on the Commodore 64 and the Amiga in 1989. But I'd never played it, but I went back and had a look. It's horrible looking, horrible sounding, and it looks absolute garbage. So I'd steer well clear of that. It's just, if you're going to do a game now, would you do it, two parts of this game? Would you do like the film itself? Would you do half based on the game show and then half based on the rebellion? I'm like, I might just skip the rebellion bit because nobody gives a shit about the rebellion bit. You just want to do it based on the game show, right?
Yeah, you do it on the game show, Ted.
So the only thing I could think of was say something like, even though tonally it's completely different, but you think of something like Shadow of the Colossus by Team Ico. Okay. It's like a game which is basically just a collection of boss battles. Like, that's all there is. Like, there's no fighting kind of, underlings or anything like that. It's like you've got the ability to escape and maybe do minor investigations if you wanted to. But mostly we're talking about long boss battles, and that's pretty much it. And part of it is getting to the boss battle, kind of traveling through the world. But you're not necessarily fighting your way through the world. You're just kind of like exploring until all of a sudden the boss just shows up. I thought something like that would work, but I have no idea.
So I would stick to the gorier side of it if you do. Mm-hmm. And Bottle Rockets and Namco did a Splatterhouse remake in 2010. And that would kind of work. And that would kind of work for it because the graphic style of that was great. And if you're having that run, because obviously it's the house in Splatterhouse, but in this then you're running through what used to be LA or wherever it is that it's meant to be the game zone. And that's a very Escape from New York vibe, but I guess it was Escape from LA in the sequel, so yeah. And the viewers had, I guess, in the game you'd have more stalkers to go against. You'd have lesser stalkers, and then the big bosses and things like that. So like Buzzsaw could have his own little army, and then you go level, and then Sub-Zero has his own little army. Do you know what I mean? No, I think that totally makes more sense because obviously, like I've got it in my head, it's like trying to link it into the show because they don't really fight anyone else. They just fight. Essentially, the Slayers are boss battles, aren't they? They're all tonally different, very much in that kind of like, Sub-Zero is the ice world, Fireball is the fire world. It's very much on the nose. And I think actually, if you kind of went instead of, and part of this will be budget constraints, is that if their levels were much more themed, should we say? And obviously, I guess there is like, Sub-Zero does fight them in an ice rink, I suppose. So that's pretty on the nose. But I like the idea, like you said, of having their underlings. So you've got to kill all their little dudes before you even get to Sub-Zero. Unless Sub-Zero was on roller skates instead of ice skates, he could go anywhere then. But the fact is, he's on ice skates, so he is limited to that one area. Even as well. Like none of the others in the film had their own section, but you pull Sub-Zero, so all of a sudden, then you have to get them to Sub-Zero's area. Yeah. Well, yeah, but I know I like the idea of going like full on, like major worlds. Like you go to Ice World, and you've got to get through Ice World. You've got to fight all the underlings to get to Sub-Zero, and maybe you have to do it in a time limit. And as you're going through, the more elaborate your kills, even against the underlings, maybe the more cash you win. It's like you get extra bonus points for impressing the crowd, and you can see the screens with like the people outside, and you can see the odds on you going up and down based on your performance in a level, something along those lines. I think that's pretty cool. I think if you do that Splatterhouse style, I think you're onto a winner. Although Splatterhouse wasn't really well received, but that's by the by. But the idea, it fundamentally works all the same. Totally. All right, cool. No, that sounds good. So I think, so in terms of reviews... And if we're going to recommend it to others. So it's tricky. Yeah. In terms of score, I'm going like 3 out of 5. It's very much kind of like, I still thoroughly enjoyed this film. It's got tons of problems.
It's not brilliantly directed. It's not often very well explained, but it's still got Pete Garney delivering tons of one-liners. All the stuff against the Slayers, despite the fact that most of them just look totally out of shape, is really fun. So despite its problems, I still had fun with it. It's 3 stars. Would I encourage others to watch it? I still think I would. Because above all else, it's only really now, because we're watching maybe with a more critical eye, that I'm starting to pick the film apart. But growing up and watching this film so many parts, really what my brain focused on was the game show. And all that stuff still works brilliantly well, despite the fact that it doesn't really make any sense, because it's just fun. So yeah, if someone was like, should I watch Running Man? I was like, if you like Arnie films, totally watch Running Man. Just be warned, it's not one of his best, but it's decent all the same.
So you pretty much just stole everything I was going to say. It's a 3.
Brilliant. That's my favourite kind.
And I would recommend it to Arnie fans. Anyone who enjoys an Arnie film or anything, yeah, go for it. If you want films, I mean, yeah, it's probably one of the Garnies. But, I mean, there are better Arnie films out there. But absolutely watch this film. And as you've said previously, and I hate saying leave your brain at the door, because why would you do that? Why are you watching a film just to leave your brain at the door? But in the case of
you really need to, though. You need to with this film.
Think this film, because as I said in my intro, I overthought this film quite a bit, especially around the rules and everything. But no, so for me, it's 3, and I would recommend it to people that enjoy Arnie films. So
yeah, so it's one of those films, like you said, if you feel yourself asking a question, just don't ask it. Abandon that question immediately and just go back to enjoying the shiny colors, explosions, and deaths, because that's the way to watch this film for sure. And so yeah, of course. So what are we doing? What are we doing next week, dude?
Oh, actually, yeah, it's my turn, isn't it?
It is your turn. Yeah, it is your turn. Sorry to put you on the spot here, but very much your choice.
No, so I've been thinking about this when it was going to come to my turn, and I don't think you've watched this film. I don't think you've actually heard about this film until we had a conversation a couple of weeks back, off recording, of course. Charlie Sheen's The Wraith.
Yeah, no idea. Really no idea. You mentioned it in passing. I looked it up. I thought, well, maybe it'll be one of those ones where I'll recognize the poster or something on those lines. Something will click up. Oh, yeah, The Wraith. I've not seen it, but I know The Wraith. No fucking idea. Didn't know it was a thing. So, yeah.
We've moved off 1987 to go to 1986, and Charlie Sheen is a drifter that comes into town, and coincidentally, as he comes into town, so does a mystic racer in a futuristic car that seems to be killing off local drag racers for reasons unknown, obviously.
Well, this sounds like another... I mean, I don't know what to make of that at all. So, I mean, honestly, I love these when it's a film I've inexplicably not heard of. I know nothing about. So, dude, I'm going into it with an open mind. Charlie Sheen, drag racers, murders. Why not? Let's go for it.
Also, Randy Quaid. I mean, you can't go wrong with a bit of Randy.
Well, if I wasn't looking forward to it already, I certainly am now. So please do join us for what appears to be an absolute, well, certainly sounds bonkers, The Wraith next week. And apparently you can watch it if you're a Prime member. It's on Amazon Prime. You don't have to rent it. Supposedly it's there free to watch, I think.
So it's I think it's part of the new IMDb TV deal they have, where you can watch films with adverts. So
okay, that sounds good.
I think it breaks in 2 or 3 times. But
yeah,
unfortunately,
but hey, so it's a way to watch it that absolutely works for me. So if you're like me and you've never heard of The Wraith, which I suspect is going to be a lot of people, because I've never even heard of this film, but and maybe it's one of those films. If you've all heard of it and I'm an idiot, please do let me know online. But yeah, either way,
if you're like me and you own this film on digital and DVD, go ahead and enjoy The Wraith.
The Wraith. Well, yes. Well, as always, thanks for joining us, and please do join us next week for The Wraith, apparently. It's been a pleasure, dude. So catch you guys later. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye now.
Oh, yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't move smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.
Are you